electronics to please silence all electronic devices at this time. We're going to start right off with school administrative matters. I sent an email out to everyone today about topics that asking about topics that we might want to discuss or learn about in a retreat in the near future. And I'm just going to put it out there. How do we feel about board governance training? Do we need that type of training? And if so, are there any suggestions as to who can do the training, since VSBA does not allow their representatives to train boards that don't have 100% attendance? So if we don't use them, and do we need that type of training? I'd like to have your feedback on this as a board. So I'm just throwing it out there. And does anyone have anything else they would like to work on in a retreat? Any suggestions? Do I take that to mean that we don't want to have a retreat? I mean, is there anyone out there would like to speak to this, or Ms. Holtz?
I feel we definitely need a retreat. 2 weeks ago when we met on the dais, there were several people that expressed there was dysfunction in our group, so we need it. And why can't we have 11 members attending? I mean, that's our job. That's why the public elected us here, to move forward and to work as a group and to be team players. We definitely need this. So why aren't we having 11 members?
One of our board members does not want to work with our leadership at VSBA. So that being said, that means that if we want to have board governance training, we need to have someone else be the facilitator. If it can't be Gina Patterson, we could possibly get someone else from VSBA, but they have the same guidelines to work with that she does, in that they require 100% participation. So we either go with VSBA and hope that everyone shows up for the retreat, or we hire someone else to be our facilitator. Any other? Joel?
So I had conversations with board members from several localities at the VSBA conference, November, I guess it was. And Gina came very, very highly recommended to do this kind of training. And I would recommend that we continue to try to get her, and also recommend that we have 100% participation.
Ms. Manning?
I think we've tried this 2 years in a row now, and I think that if administration feels that we need a retreat to conduct business, I would be happy to be a part of that. I just don't see why adding another year to discuss issues that obviously don't seem to be resolved in the last two sessions. I don't know how we can get anywhere. So,
however, this is board governance training.
I understand.
This is not, how we get along with each other. This has to do with how we govern together. It's a little different than what we've done in the past. Ms. Riggs?
I know that Gina does a good job, and I think, the last 2 years that we had someone, it was fairly expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So I think from finding out, from the when I was at the VSBA, it's like $1,000 for her.
Right.
I think that they're on the same wavelength. Being from Virginia, we're all part of that establishment. We should take advantage of her, her expertise. I think she would be very good. And like Joel said, I talked to people too, and they're like, she does a great job. I think it would be worth her while to get the information on governance, because there's always something we could use. So.
Any others? Ms. Rye?
Mine is more of a question. If I recall, the original timeline was like 9 to 3 with lunch break. Is there an abbreviated version where we could then hitch on with something of substance that's internal division matters?
Actually, it was 10 to 2:30, I believe, was the timeline. But you were close. That's okay.
Margin of error.
And so I'm assuming that we could add some business either before or after, right, Dr. Spence?
We certainly could. We always have opportunities to update the board, and certainly there's usually some markers at different times of the year where we can do that. I think in this scenario, the scheduling was such that we had timed it to coincide with the joint meeting that you all just participated in.
Ms. Riggs?
So, the time that we were supposed to meet, who chose that amount of time? Was it you, or was it the recommendation of Gina to say she needed that much time for that? Why was that established for that amount of time?
That was her recommendation. That was her, she actually provided me, I didn't get a chance to get it out because we canceled it before I got the agenda out to everyone.
Okay.
So I just kept it, but she had an agenda stating, what was going to be covered for board governance. But it remains that we have to have 100% attendance, or she cannot lead as a facilitator. She indicated to me that there was a board, was only 7 of them who actually came to Charlottesville, but one of their board members could not make the trip that day, and so they had to go back home and reschedule, because she's not allowed to do it unless we have 100% participation. That's VSBA's guidelines. So even if we chose someone else from VSBA to lead our to facilitate our workshop for us, we still wouldn't, we would still have to go by their guidelines. And with all 11 of us, we really have to have a commitment from the 11 board members that, yes, that is a day that we will put aside to do board governance training. So, it's either use VSBA at $1,000, which is how much it costs for the facilitator for the day, and it includes all the costs. Or if we decide we want board governance training and we choose somebody else, then we hire another facilitator from somewhere else who doesn't require 100% attendance. I think that the hang up here is that we have a board member who does not want to participate in this. Ms. Felton.
And you answered some of it already. It looks like it's leading towards the will of the board to have a retreat, and you did mention to get another facilitator. What are the criteria? If we presented one, how will we go about it? Will we just present a name or a person to you, and you would do all of the investigation about whether it's feasible or not for another facilitator? You are mentioning that, another facilitator, other than the VSB.
I would look, honestly, to Dr. Spence, because he knows a lot of people who are experts in the field who could help with that. So
I mention that because it looks like we are all leaning towards having a retreat, but it looks like it's the having it from the facility from VSBA. So I just need to know.
yeah, right.
Move beyond that.
Mr. Edwards.
The suggestion was that we deal with substantive matters as well. Yet when we opened the floor for substantive matters, there was silence. We're already in the 3rd week of January. By the time we get one planned, we're in the middle of the budget season, or probably even into the spring. Why don't we just hold back? I mean, I'm disappointed. We definitely need governance training, but we may or may not need a retreat for other matters. But I think we certainly will by July, when we have one penciled in anyway. I'd suggest we just go ahead and work on that and try to come up with something that'll work in July, and not stick one in March or April, or because I don't think we could pull it together any sooner than that.
Right. In the past, we've had actually a 2-day retreat in July. We've done that before also, if we've needed the time. Is there consensus with that we possibly might want to wait till July and do possibly if we need guidance in July at that point in time, tackle it then?
I vote for that.
How many of you all? Could I just see a raise of hands for those of you who think July might be a better time to talk about doing a retreat? Okay.
It doesn't matter.
So it looks to me like
It really doesn't matter.
we're headed to July, and if we need more time in July, we might have to have a day and a half or possibly 2 days in July. So we'll just think about that, and we'll see what happens, and we'll just put off a retreat for now. Okay? Okay. Ms. Holtz?
I just want to remind people, because I think we forget, VSBA, we say that so fast. I just want to say, we are a school board, Virginia School Board Association of our state. We belong to them. They are our association. They give us the guidelines as to govern and so many other things. Once a year, we go up to Williamsburg, and once again, we have workshops that show us how to govern and many, many other things. So it's our association. I don't understand why we're turning them down. Anyhow, it's Virginia School Board Association. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just have a couple other things under admin matters. Ms. Weems is absent this evening due to a family health issue. And I need to remind everybody that the statement of economic interest, if you haven't turned it into Ms. Alexander, to please get that into her. It's due February 1st. Also, I passed out the agenda for February 12th. Usually that would be emailed to you, but anyway, Ms. Alexander decided to give it to you in a hard copy this evening instead. And we need to come up with a start time for the special meeting on February 5th. We have a special meeting scheduled for February 5th, and we need to come up with a start time. And since that's not a regular meeting, do any of you all have a preference for 5 or 6 o'clock? What would you all prefer? Could somebody give me some guidelines here for February 5th?
And just as a
Yes.
reminder, this is a special meeting called for the presentation of the superintendent's estimate of needs. This is your first crack at the budget.
February? Well, February 5th.
February
Right.
5th.
Right.
This keeps us on the timeline in order to enable us to get the budget approved to council on time.
Ms. Hughes, I know that you work, so what time works for you?
Yeah, I'd actually prefer the regular 6 o'clock time because, yeah, I do work during the day.
Okay. Does anyone else have any, is that okay with everyone else? 6 o'clock start for February 5th? Okay. And also, just a quick announcement, policy 7-21, is, if there's no objection, we'd like to add that to the agenda this evening. I believe it was emailed to you, Cammie emailed that to you all on Friday, for you to look at. So we'd like to add that to, I believe it's under information this evening, correct? Yeah,
C17.
it would be item 13,
C17.
right, C17. Is that okay with everyone?
What's
So I'll
that?
just make that announcement, yes,
Just for information.
yes, it will be for information this evening. Okay, any other admin matters? Okay, Dr. Spence, we're ready to move on.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
I'd
sorry.
just like to say, I'm sorry. I just had to take this moment to bring a communique back from the Virginia Beach Denomination Minister Conference, thanking the school board for supporting them at the Martin Luther King breakfast on yesterday morning. We had never had that full turnout of the school board or the administration before, so they were really impressed. Also, your 13 students there that morning.
It was
Was
nice.
very impressed with meeting all of you, and they brought a message back saying how grateful they were that you took the time out to have that conversation with them. So they're taking all that in and taking that back and rethinking about being teachers and administrative education. So again, I just like to say thank you for pulling that off. Normally we go to Norfolk, but we decided to support our own this time around, and it was a great turnout. The community was impacted by your being there as well. There's a lot of buzz going on, and your name is being tossed around, so thank you for coming.
Thank you. Ms. Rye?
Yes, and very quickly, I had a chance encounter with a military family that has recently returned from one of our base Department of Defense schools, that shall remain nameless. But what I wanted to share is a shout out to Princess Anne High School it was very revealing that this family and our military counselors deserve credit, because in a lot of ways, they're helping to bring the Department of Defense up to speed on virtual learning, digital learning options. And it was just nice to know that we have families concerned enough, not looking out just for their own families, because they wound up meeting with the superintendent of the Department of Defense schools, so that these kids, when they come back, are not out of alignment with what they need for their goals. And I wanted to share
Thank you.
that.
Okay, is that everyone? Thank you. Dr. Spence?
Yep, thank you, Madam Chair. This is a conversation. There's been some adjustments in the state code which require the board to look at a continuous improvement plan for a new set of schools. And these are schools that have a tier 3 designation. Don's going to get into a little bit of that. But in advance of your doing that, we thought we might revisit the school improvement process and the plan for continuous improvement so that you know what it is that you'll be looking at in the coming weeks. These are going to be a lot of documents, and we don't want to just jump on you. We want you to know what's coming and why. And so I'll turn it over to Dr. Robertson to explain that.
Thank you, Dr. Spence. So good afternoon, Chairwoman Anderson, Vice Chair Melnick, members of the board, and Dr. Spence. Again, the purpose of today's presentation is to set the stage for an upcoming presentation item in the next school board meeting related to new requirements as part of changes to the standards of accreditation. Specifically, I'll be sharing information related to 2 key processes: school improvement or support, and the plan for continuous improvement, that have served as the foundation for our success improving academic achievement for all students. First, I'd like to introduce to our new board member and reintroduce to others the school improvement process. Noted on this slide are the 3 main departments that work directly with schools on a regular basis. And those departments include the Department of School Leadership, Planning, Innovation, and Accountability, and the Department of Teaching and Learning. Not noted but equally important to the process, the Department of Budget and Finance, as they play a key role when needed in supporting our neediest students. When we started designing this process in 2014-15, we identified 3 key considerations. The first was, how do we provide tiered support to all 86 schools, centers in a fair and equitable manner? How do we create a trusting and collaborative process between the school and central office staff? And how do we create a schedule that would meet school and central office staff constraints and needs? Entering 2014, let me go back one here. Sorry about that. I think I clicked it too fast. Entering 2014-15, 16 of our 82 tested schools were not fully accredited, marking the 3rd year in a row when not all of our schools had been fully accredited. That year, we introduced the school improvement process with its 4 tiers shown here on the slide. Each tier used different criteria to place schools, factoring in state accreditation and federal accountability status, staff needs, and other data sources. The schools in Tier 1 were our highest performing schools and had 2 support meetings per year, whereas schools in Tier 4 were our lowest performing schools and they had 6 support meetings per year. Schools in Tiers 2 and 3 fell in between on the achievement continuum, which determined their level of support. In developing the school improvement process, we wanted to determine how to get the 3 departments, school leadership, planning, innovation, accountability, and teaching and learning together to review school and division calendars to schedule those school support meetings. As you can imagine, with the number of meetings centrally and at schools, we wanted to ensure we had that process taken care of before we met with schools. We developed protocols to ensure that all central office staff understood their roles in these support meetings. And then finally, Dr. Spence tasked all chief officers to ensure their department teams provided on-demand support to schools. I remember the phrase that he used 6 weeks into the job was, we need to move away from the easy no to the hard yes. Captured on this slide is one of the original meeting agenda templates used in these meetings. Things to note include the leadership of the Dosel supervisor and the principal in these meetings. What staff were in attendance, and what questions guided the agenda and evidence of data reviewed and next steps. In these meetings, it is routine to see teachers, instructional specialists, coaches, staff from the Department of Teaching and Learning, OPEC, PIA, Dosel, etc. Whoever needs to be in the meeting based upon the agenda is in the meeting. So when discussions are being had and decisions are being made, immediate support can be provided. So let me share with you a video that we did a couple years ago about this particular process.
It's about meeting the needs of the community and the students we serve. In 2014-15, 16 of 82 VBCPS testing schools, including Bayside Middle and Bergneck Elementary,
VBCPS created a tiered school improvement support process.
The success of anybody, you have to match the needs and give the supports for those needs no matter what you're doing. From central office down to the building level, we know our kids very well. I mean, people in central office know my teachers by name. I know my students by name. And knowing people and knowing their needs is the key to success.
The new process involves placing schools in 4 tiers to receive targeted support from 4 key departments: school leadership, teaching and learning, planning, innovation and accountability, and budget and finance.
We don't have this one size fit all. It has to be the needs of the building. We had a large group. Superintendent was a part of it. So we broke up into 2 and we went our separate ways and did some learning walks, culture walks, and we came back. And I wasn't a part of this one group, but one of the central office staff members shared that when he was in the classroom, he had actually clocked how long it would take for the students to log in and get into the laptops. We had refurbished laptops. We were, at the time, not a one-to-one school. And I knew that it was slow, but when someone actually comes and it says to you, you know, it took 5 minutes to get your kids logged in, I think it may even been 6. And we have a 50-minute bell, that's a problem. And the whole team at that point, again, we're debriefing about our walks, said that we need to get you some Chromebooks in your literacy classroom. Within 3 weeks, we had our Chromebooks in every English classroom.
At the end of the year last year, we noticed our Q3 scores had kind of dipped in our quarterly assessments. And we met with central office. Quarterly, we also meet with central office, and they come in and we look at data and we try and find out what kind of supports are best for our students. So we had central office folks come in and we looked at the data first, and the kids where they were struggling, exact standards that they were missing. And folks from central office came in and they tutored our kids and helped out. I mean, I've never been in a system where people from central office will come in and help out with kids and actually get in the classroom and know exactly what it was that they're struggling with to try and remediate them. And one-on-one, you know, doing the tutoring with the kids.
Both Johnson and Yoshida praised the collaboration between their staff and central office support teams.
Number 1 is building relationships for anything to make sure that somebody's successful. And if someone feels that they're supported, it is the one thing that will help them get through it.
The relationship between Bayside Middle and central office is intimate, and it's kind of strange to say that, but it is, because of the fact that I think sometimes I need to go ahead and set up an office for my central office supervisor, because she's here often, knows the staff, knows the students, and understands what's going on.
A laser focus on school improvement with all key stakeholders involved in the work produced excellent results. This year, all VBCPS schools are fully accredited.
I'm excited about being fully accredited because we got that SOL flag, but my mantra has been the flag is up and it's not coming down. So what I love about central office and our administrators is that the support didn't go away.
In Virginia Beach, it is almost like a utopian society when it comes to support. That support is always there when we need it, which is the most appreciative thing that I could possibly have.
As noted in the video, all schools are now fully accredited. Captured here is the progress made each year after the school improvement process began. In 3 years, we went from having 16 schools not fully accredited to all schools fully accredited, and this year, for a second consecutive year, all schools remain fully accredited. Not captured here, but as you may be aware, during the same time period, we have also seen year-over-year increases in student performance in the areas of graduation rates, AP enrollment, SAT performance, and attainment industry certifications. We believe that this process has led to a more focused approach to meeting students' academic needs, and as a result, improvements to student performance across the academic spectrum. As a result of this work, we also found that school and central office staff developed shared ownership for student learning in each building. I recall my first year as the chief officer of the Department of Planning, Innovation, and Accountability, when I sent my student assessment team out, some of them didn't know where the schools were. They had served the schools, but they didn't know where the schools were because they had never been there. Fast forward 1 year into that process, we're having our monthly department meetings, and they're using terms like my school and we. All of a sudden, they had ownership of their schools. And so when my team was then going to their schools, they were coming with proactive solutions to bring to the table. Support meetings promoted a closer look at subgroup performance and led to schools creating and maintaining data walls throughout the year to monitor individual student progress on key indicators. It is not unusual to walk with a principal or assistant principal in a building and be able to know the students by name and know what their deficiency areas are and the supports that are being provided. Each year, the process has been reviewed and improved by the Department of School Leadership, PIA, and TNL based on feedback from staff. In fact, it's no longer called the school improvement process. It's called the school support process. And that change was in 2016-17. We also have garnered national recognition through the Successful Practices Network and AASA, who recognize this process as one of the top 25 innovative practices in 2017-18. Dr. Philip Lanou, who was the 2015 National Superintendent of the Year, came to Virginia Beach in 2017 after hearing about our program and seeing some artifacts to actually visit school improvement meetings to make a recommendation as to whether or not he felt like our practice met the criteria for the 25 most innovative practices, and it was. And in the submission, we were selected again as one of those programs. I would also proud to note that me and many of my colleagues have shared this information and this process at national level conferences. And I'm quite certain that this process has been replicated in school divisions, not only in the Commonwealth, but across the country, based on some feedback I and others have had. And we see our friends and colleagues who in similar roles at regional, state, and national conferences. Next, I want to turn your attention to the other process we use in helping schools improve. The Plan for Continuous Improvement has long been a process in Virginia Beach City Public Schools. As with any process we use, we review and revise as circumstances change. Captured here is a screenshot at page 1 on a PCI. The components of all PCIs include: they're aligned to the strategic framework goals. They follow the Plan, Do, Check, Act format. They include key data summary and content areas. They have a minimum of 3 SMART goals, 2 in the content and 1 in choice. They indicate key interim measures to assess progress on SMART goals, and you heard some mention of that by both Dr. Johnson and Mr. Yoshida. And they also note professional learning that's needed in support of those SMART goals. Captured here are 2 other data summary pages you would find in each school's PCI. Schools follow a specific process when developing their PCI. That includes, it's developed annually each fall by school staff in consultation with the Department of School Leadership and the School Planning Council. It's reviewed and approved by school leadership each fall. It's reviewed in every school support meeting. And it's a living document. It's updated throughout the year and virtually viewable to all school staff. At this point, before I go forward, I want to ask if anyone has any questions about the Plan for Continuous Improvement or the school support process before I talk about next steps.
Go ahead.
Okay. captured here, or what I'm showing you on the next slide is what we're gonna do on February 12th. And that is where, as an information item, you're gonna be asked to review, select school plans for continuous improvement, and come back February 28th to approve those plans. Some language I wanna point out to you on this slide. If a school has one level 2 notation on their accreditation plan. And here you'll see in this sample of South Middle School, they had 3 level 2s. One in English achievement gaps, one in math achievement gaps, and one in chronic absenteeism. If you have one of those, it still means you're accredited because you can have a level 1 and a level 2. But if you have one, the LEA is required to review and approve the school's plan for continuous improvement. And so when I come back to you on February 12th, you'll have the schools that need to be reviewed sent to you in advance. And I'll do a presentation to walk you through some of the changes to the language around the standards of accreditation. Give you a chance to ask any questions that you have to help you in your consideration for approving those plans on February 28th. So at this time, anyone have any questions about next steps? Okay, thank you.
Yep.
26 or 28?
Yeah, just for clarification, the approval of those will be on February 26th. We'll take a vote. So
26.
We're good?
I'm good.
Board members, you'll note that this is a item originally projected in the quarterly forecast as a Blue Ribbon Panel update. We've adjusted that to a safe school staffing recommendation conversation that we want to have with you prior to our budget conversation with you so that you're aware of what we're thinking about and we can understand what you're thinking about relative to this. And we will come back to you, and I think Mr. Freeman will mention that, but we'll come back to you later in the spring with a full update on the Blue Ribbon Panel and the work that's been happening around that. But this is primarily a staffing and budget conversation. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Mr. Freeman.
Thanks, Dr. Spence. Columbine High School, Sandy Hook Elementary School, and Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. These are all nationally recognized names. They are not recognized for their achievements in the classroom or the achievements of their students, but for their own individual, tragic, brief moments in time. Columbine was nearly 20 years ago. Parkland, just less than a year. You're likely aware of the many similar school-related incidents in the years between. How we think about school security as a nation has changed, and we need to adapt. There are many common threads in these incidents. One is that these schools and communities don't look terribly different than ours. Another is that these incidents were preventable. We need to learn from these incidents and prepare ourselves in order to prevent a similar catastrophic incident at one of our schools. Every leader in those school districts for the months and years following those incidents, as they supported their grieving families and communities, were likely asking themselves, what could we have done to be better prepared? The key is answering that question proactively rather than reactively. Virginia Beach City Public Schools took the proactive approach and established the Blue Ribbon Panel for School Safety and Security last year to develop a way forward. The Blue Ribbon Panel brought together school division leadership, Navy partners from NAS Oceana, and city partners from Virginia Beach Police Department and the Department of Human Services, as well as school staff, parents, and students to review our security infrastructure and safety protocols. We held 2 community meetings, held in E-Town Hall, and conducted building physical security assessments led by Navy and Virginia Beach Police Department security experts. In the spring, the Blue Ribbon Panel recommendations were published. We are here to update you today on Blue Ribbon Panel recommendation number 5, which tasked us to reevaluate the security personnel program. This is an informational brief to provide you background information prior to budget discussions with the superintendent in the coming weeks. Our evaluation and our assessment for the way forward are based on the Blue Ribbon Panel recommendations, knowledge and opinions of established school leadership, and knowledge and opinions of new school leadership. Mr. DeMartini, with his 23 years on the police force, 5 of which were as a school resource officer, and 5 of which he was a SWAT team member. And my 28 years of Navy experience, in which the vast majority of my career was dedicated to developing and implementing training plans and managing a security department across 6 naval installations. You should all have a hard copy notes page for this presentation in front of you so that you can prepare any questions that you have for the end of the brief. You should also have a one-page printout of the Blue Ribbon Panel recommendations that you can refer to during the brief. This isn't a full Blue Ribbon Panel update. We'll come back to you with that later on in the year. You've also probably noted that I haven't listed recommendations 9 through 11 on the slide. We won't be addressing those because they are under the purview of Department of Teaching and Learning, and while critical to our efforts to improve school safety, are not part of today's topic. They are, however, included in your handout for reference. Every component of this evaluation and assessment ties to one or more of the Blue Ribbon Panel recommendations that you see displayed. I've highlighted some keywords and tasks to help you associate how our evaluation and assessment apply to the Blue Ribbon Panel recommendations. Expand training, preventative security, more frequent audits, strengthen procedures, reevaluate security personnel, strengthen infrastructure, increase cameras and sensors, and again, strengthen infrastructure. This is the structure of the Office of Safe Schools. The gray shaded area represents our 86 schools. In those 86 schools, we have 196 security assistants. That's 1 per elementary school, 2 to 5 per middle school, and 6 to 10 per high school. You can see that I have 32 school resource officers listed. Those are uniformed police officers that are integrated within our schools. They are extremely important partner and must be mentioned whenever we talk about securing our schools. But because this brief is intended to inform you about our structure and budget implications, I won't mention them again. All right, I mentioned that the gray area represents 86 schools, and each school looks a little bit different. So let's take a look at an example. So this is a typical high school setup. 5 assistant principals and 6 security assistants assigned. Those security assistants work 7.33-hour days, paid lunch. They work 189 days out of the year, which means that there are 4 days when our school staffs are working and there are no security assistants in the building. In addition to missing coverage, these 4 days are missed training opportunities for our security assistants. All security assistants work directly for an assistant principal, so the assistant principal is the de facto lead. This AP has many responsibilities. Security is just a small part. This is an example of what a high school AP has to manage. There is not enough time in the day, and our APs aren't properly trained or resourced to perform their security role effectively. This has created an environment where training curriculum, periodic drills and exercises, and infrastructure improvements are lacking. All right, that was a high school example. At the elementary school level, it's more challenging. There is 1 AP who is responsible for everything, including security, and there is 1 security assistant assigned. Within our schools, those are some of the conditions that we see that need improvement. Now let's consider the support staff that are external to our schools. We'll start with the security officers. There are They work nights and weekends, essentially during non-working hours. They respond to our 86 schools, providing security support as needed during those non-working hours, but there are not enough to provide daytime response to schools. So when schools are in session, response is handled by our coordinators, and there are 2 to cover all 86 schools. They are very good at providing responsive support to our schools, and our principals appreciate it. This is actually something we do very well. However, coordinators are expected to conduct audits and assessments, develop, plan, and conduct training, and to manage security equipment and acquisition for 86 schools and 196 security systems. Our coordinators' responsiveness is preventing them from being effective at assessments, training, and equipment management, and at taking maximum advantage of available grants. When you understand our current structure, it's easy to see why the Blue Ribbon Panel came to their recommendations. Now I'd like to bring up Mr. DeMartini to tell you how we intend to act on Blue Ribbon Panel recommendation number 5.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Here's how we intend to address these challenges. The security supervisor. We will identify an experienced, dependable, and skilled security assistant within the secondary schools to promote them to a leadership position. This is not an additional staffing position. As you may notice, this slide has the original 6 positions, but we have moved one to a lead. This will be supplemented with a stipend. The intent is to reduce the burden placed on assistant principal and put the responsibilities associated with the security team on a properly trained subject matter expert. This position will support Blue Ribbon Panels 3, 4, and 5. The coordinator's position. In order to enact the Blue Ribbon Panel's recommendation, our assessment is we need a third coordinator. We know that a third position will allow for more frequent audits, will increase our ability to review assessments, and provide more thorough oversight and follow-up. This will allow for a more robust system of preventative security, implementing and providing expanded training opportunities to include tabletop exercises. This position will directly support most of our Blue Ribbon Panel recommendations. A project manager position will assist in the developing, researching, and maintaining of the training curriculum. It will serve as the infrastructure improvement manager. This will allow for the coordinators to be more accessible and responsive to their specific tasks. And lastly, researching, applying, and maintaining of federal and state security grants. Please keep in mind the process for applying for grants and maintaining grants can be a tedious task. The state has adopted a strict application process. This will support all Blue Ribbon Panel driven projects. The security officers. In order to reach 24/7 coverage, we need 4 more. This will allow for response to identified needs and principal requests during the school day, in addition to carrying out their current responsibilities and duties of nighttime and weekend coverage. Supporting Blue Ribbon Panel recommendations 4 and 5. The scheduled days and uniforms. This will allow the security assistant schedule with the current staff schedule and allowing for additional level of security during staff's working days, increased by 4. As well as providing extra time for the expanded training opportunities we intend to implement without pulling the assistants from their schools' assignments while the students are in session. Uniforms. Uniforms will give a visual presence, quickly identifying our security team. It will create an employee level of ownership while providing professional appearance. Mr. Freeman? Budget implications.
These are the budget implications. The first 2 figures that you see, those are all inclusive. They include benefits as well. For the 4 additional security officers, the 10-month employees, $157,000 covers those 10-month employees, and that covers all 4. $54,000 covers 27 security supervisors, and this is based upon a stipend, not a promotion to the next level. Uniforms, $100,000 for the first year, $60,000 annually thereafter. The 4 additional days in schools for security assistance is estimated at just over $100,000. And the total that you see is the estimated first year cost. everything that you've seen up to this point, I'll call phase one. In phase two, we intend to update job descriptions, revise the hiring process, review audit, assessment, and incident support, and to continue to refine leadership structure. These changes will enable us to meet the expectations inherent in the Blue Ribbon Panel recommendations. As a reminder, this was an informational brief intended to inform you in advance of your budget discussions with the superintendent in the coming weeks. I will take any questions you have.
So the additional days that you're adding for the security assistance, is that correct?
Yes.
Is for training purposes, correct?
Two purposes. Primarily, right now, there's covered, we have, our staff is in the building, and there are no security assistants that are scheduled to be in there for those 4 days. So
Okay.
we'd like to, we need to have coverage for our
Okay.
staff while they're in the building.
I see.
But it also provides an opportunity for training when the students aren't in the building, and we can provide training opportunities to them that are available that wouldn't be there if the students were in the classroom.
I see. Thank you. Any other questions? Ms. Holtz?
Oh, thank you. Do the security officers carry weapons?
They do not.
They don't.
Our school resource officers, as police officers do, and none of our other employees carry weapons.
I'm looking back to all the schools that I've visited, and most of them have a glass for the front door. Is that bulletproof?
I don't want to speak out of line because I haven't specifically researched that one. Tommy, you want to take that one?
Could that survive an AK or whatever? I don't have a gun. The AR-15 or whatever.
No, ma'am. It is not bulletproof.
Okay, we need to do something about that.
So just to also keep it on track, when we come back, there are another set of recommendations that we'll be talking about that are related to infrastructure, building standards, those sorts of things. This is specific to personnel.
Okay.
Okay. Ms. Manning?
Thank you.
So the security assistants that are gonna be taking a lead role, at each school, do you feel that we have people in place that could fill that role at each school, or is that something?
So
That
we
might
would
move
analyze
people
that as
around?
part of the process.
Okay.
So if you're suggesting if we would just take somebody from within the school system, we don't know what that structure is gonna look like. We know that we would hire qualified candidates and put them into that position.
Okay, so it's not necessarily taking one of the ones that we have at a school and moving them into that leadership role,
That's correct.
but it could be.
It could.
Okay. And then the coordinator of safe schools and the project manager positions. Do you think that those would need to be an ongoing position once we get everything up and running smoothly? Do you think that those would be long-term positions or short-term positions?
Yes, they're long-term.
Okay. And are those 10-month or year? 12 month? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
So, from a next steps, the reason I asked them to put next steps up there was just to make sure that I brief you on what the next steps are. When we bring the estimate of needs forward, it is my intention to place this recommendation into the estimate of needs. And so that's something that you'll see in context with all of the other competing needs, and I just want you to be aware of why it's in there. We can talk about it at that time. But I did want you to have some time to reflect on that. That is not the only significant personnel recommendation that you will see. You will also see some behavioral and mental health recommendations relative to school counselors, for example, and behavioral specialist positions that we visited in the past that we feel like are critical needs areas. And then we'll be able to talk about those as well. But I wanted you to at least have some context for why you'll see that in the estimate of needs.
Ms. Manning?
Question for Dr. Spence. Will we have the infrastructure briefing before the budget season or?
No, they won't, because that won't be included in the estimate of needs. We can talk more about what those might look like, but as a, for example, you know that in the reversion dollars, we set aside a significant amount of money for immediate infrastructure upgrades. And so we're using some of those reversion dollars for things like fencing. We're looking at that for cameras, upgrading some of our camera systems. And you may have already noticed if you're visiting our schools that many of our security desks are already being moved forward to the front doors. So that's what those dollars are going towards now. And we'll identify long-term needs either in the capital or operating budget for other infrastructure upgrades. But right now, we're focused on the personnel standards and then also spending the reversion dollars that were allocated for it.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
No, but the budget limitations.
Mr. McDonald, sorry.
Sorry, and I meant to ask why everyone was still up. I'm still trying to process. Are there other school divisions that have a similar sort of hierarchy for the security assistants and the security supervisor position? And then why opt for a stipend and not an actual position that has a higher salary?
So I can answer the first part, and then we can talk about the stipend part. The first answer is yes, there are. They are typically in larger divisions. So you won't find them in smaller divisions. As you already know, we're one of the few school divisions that's fortunate enough to have security assistants at the elementary level. And also then one of the few school divisions in the state of Virginia in particular that's fortunate enough to have security assistants at the number that we do in the secondary schools. And in the school divisions, for example, in Houston ISD where I work, where you did have a number of security assistants, there was always a supervisor. In that scenario, it was the police officer who worked in the building, but in that scenario, it was because the police officer worked for us. We had our own police department in the school division. So it's, but I have also found in other school divisions of comparable size that they do have that structure where there is a supervisor for the security personnel in the building.
Regarding the question about the stipend, so that's something we worked hand in hand with HR on to make sure that that we got it right. We're keenly aware that we are not in a resource unlimited environment. In our conversations with HR, we believe that we were hitting the right target. I'll give.
Yeah, the part of that is once that job description is updated and we review it and analyze it, we might very well recommend what you're talking about. It's still either a stipend. It's the funding right now that we're kind of looking for. That makes sense?
Yeah, it does, and that was the answer I would have expected. So we're talking about $2,000 stipend for positions that get paid roughly $21,700, and then that $2,000 stipend being to take responsibilities off someone that's highly educated in a professional field. I have a little concern that we're not really going to get what we want out of a $2,000 stipend in that position. Dan, further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any others? Thank you. So, I can't believe it's only 5:10. I thought we were gonna go really late, but, we might be able to
We should go into close.
go
at
into
least have
close
the
for this, okay.
First part of the conversation.
At least for one of the closed sessions, for one of these.
Yeah.
Right. So, Ms. Melnick, please read the motion for us to go into close at this time.
Make a motion that the school board adopt a motion to recess into a closed, did that make sense? School board adopt a motion to recess into a closed meeting pursuant to the exemptions from open meetings allowed by section 2.2-3711, part A, paragraph 7, 8, and 29 of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended for legal matters. Consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual or probable litigation where such consultation or briefing in open meetings would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body pursuant to section 2.2-3711A7, and consultation with legal counsel employed by or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel, section 2.2-3711A8, namely to discuss pending and probable litigation regarding the school board and school division. Contract matters, discussion of the award of a public contract involving the expenditure of public funds, including interviews of bidders or offerers, and discussion of the terms or scope of such contract where discussion in open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body pursuant to section 2.2-3711A29, namely to discuss proposals submitted in accordance with Code of Virginia 56-575.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. McDonald has seconded the motion. All in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? The motion is passed. We will begin closed session as soon as the door is closed.